47 million Americans left their jobs in 2021. For context, that means an estimated total of 23.5% of people left their day jobs last year because they were unhappy, according to Zippia. You could add Gabriel DeRita to that very list. He describes himself as a goal whisperer and a mushroom nerd. He left a fancy tech job in 2017 to travel the world by bike, and throughout the duration of that very process, he found his calling in coaching. He now spends his days as a purpose alignment coach and leadership development facilitator. He helps individuals and teams align with what they consider that matters and make effective connections with self and other. How does he define his moment of impact, and how does he really assist others to reach their fullest potential? Well, if you're pondering the answers to any of those questions, today you're in luck, because DeRita joined me this week to tell me more. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. Absolutely. So, Gabriel, if you are ready, I'll take a moment to welcome you to the program. And I'm super excited to talk to you this morning about purpose alignment coaching, my friend, and a little bit about your personal journey. Great to see you this morning, and thank you so very much for being here.
Yeah, for sure. Let's get right to it.
Absolutely. Now, Gabriel, I know that this journey that you're currently on started in 2017 when you left a high-paying tech job to travel the world on bicycle, and you found your purpose in coaching. So I'm wondering if you can tell me a little bit about that journey this morning.
Yeah, it was a moment that felt like it was a long time coming for me. I had a promise to myself that I made when I was maybe 20 years old that I wanted to travel the world. And as I was turning 30, I realized it would be harder and harder to honor that promise as I got older. And I was experiencing in my life what I call spiritual inflammation, which was just sort of this sense of misalignment with my daily life. It felt like I was having an allergic reaction to my life. You know, maybe it wouldn't kill me, but it was just sort of like vaguely dissonant in some way. And so I realized at a certain point that I needed to honor the calling that I felt to leave and kind of go out and explore the world on my own. And so that was when I decided to kind of put my life on the shelf as I was living it at the time. I had like a really good job in a great industry that I think a lot of people would have felt really lucky to be a part of. I had a lot of friends and a wonderful partner, and I just sort of felt like the more important thing for me at that time was to honor myself. And I knew that there were some changes ahead in my relationship and in my job that I thought, okay, if I'm going to be leaving this relationship and I'm going to be leaving this job, I don't have anything anchoring me here. So I might as well go all the way out and explore this dream that I had.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to just build very quickly on the notion of taking the leap and really trusting in your instincts and conviction. Walk me through that process and the emotions you went through when making those decisions.
Yeah, it's a great question, Kevin. I like the way you phrased that about taking the leap. And it was definitely a cliff that I was looking off for a long time. I don't want to make anybody think, oh, I just felt like right away all the strength I needed to do it. I was really scared. I was in a lot of resistance for a long time around it. And I felt like I had kind of ignored the leap several times already. I had said no. And I kind of just got this deep sense that if I kept saying no, the door would close. And I didn't want that to happen. And I remember the day I decided to do it, I was biking home from work on this beautiful San Francisco December evening, and just realizing that this life here was so pretty and so beautiful, it would just kind of lull me into a sense of like false satisfaction and maybe trap me in the wrong dream. And that's when I decided I needed to change it. And the first thing I did to sort of motivate myself to do that was I went home for the holidays and saw my friends and family and told them that I would be leaving to travel the world in the following year. So sort of like speaking that commitment to other people, so those relationships held me accountable to actually follow through with it, was one of the most important things that I did to make sure that it actually happened. Because I was scared the whole time, pretty much up until the day I got on the bike on May 1st, 2018 and rode out of the city. Up until that point, I was terrified.
And tell me, on that journey of discovery, my friend, what kept you grounded during that time, and what were some of the more interesting places you visited during your travels? I'm fascinated.
Yeah, what kept me grounded was just living on the bicycle. I mean, it's a literally and figuratively very grounding. You're interacting with the landscape and the weather in a very intimate way. So you're sort of just in constant intimate contact with your immediate surroundings. You know, if it's sunny, you're enjoying the sun. If it's rainy, you're sucking it up. If it's a steep hill you're climbing, you're struggling through it. If it's a beautiful downhill, you're enjoying the view. So you're always in the present moment in a really unique way when you're on a bicycle. And you can make decisions that respond to the present really effectively. So, you know, you can just make kind of on the go judgment calls to, oh, I'm going to stay here for the night, or I want to keep going, or I want to detour to hit that. This place looks like it's got great sandwiches. Let me just pull in here. It was a very autonomous experience. And that's what kind of kept me grounded, is the humility that traveling by bike creates, because you don't feel powerful. And at the same time you do. You're at the whim of the elements, and at the same time you have all this control. So it was really kind of balancing in that way. And some of the most interesting places I visited on the bike probably was northern Italy and the Dolomites. I had always wanted to visit there, and they have these beautiful old, they call them rails to trails. So they built all these narrow gauge railways in World War I to bring cannons up to the high passes to defend the border. And now they're all bicycle trails. So they're perfectly graded, really beautiful old stone construction tunnels that lead from the coast up to the Alps. And they were beautiful to cycle on. And I also had an amazing time in Japan on a bicycle, because the culture there is so different. The food is so unique. The towns and the villages are so old, and the architecture is so well preserved that it really felt like kind of time traveling being there. And I got to stand in a bamboo forest, which like I had never imagined what that would feel like. Instead of trees, there's just giant phone pole sized, logs of bamboo around you. It was really interesting.
That sounds fascinating, my friend. And tell me, I'm curious to also ask you about how this experience sort of elevated your quality of life. How did you better connect with yourself through this process?
That's interesting. I hadn't thought about it in exactly that way before, but I think what's coming to the surface for me now is that it really gave me a deeper sense of self-trust and self-knowing. Again, that idea of needing to be responsive to my body and to the environment, and to really kind of check in all the time with what was going on for me, really opened me up to a more profound level of self-awareness. And I think it accelerated what for me was a process of spiritual development, of just coming to a place of deep inner knowing about who I am and what I'm here to do. And it fulfilled this dream for me of going out and seeing the world and having some adventure in my life, and really learning how to rely entirely on myself. Because, in many of the places I visited, I was hundreds of miles from anyone who even knew my name. I was truly alone and a stranger in a foreign land. And that creates a level of self-reliability and self-trust that I think would be hard to get any other way.
Yeah, absolutely. And now, Gabriel, you spent your days as a purpose alignment coach and leadership development facilitator. So, what does it mean to what does it mean to you to have your purpose aligned? And how do you define effective leadership?
Two very interesting questions. I think for me, I used a model that the Japanese developed and Western society kind of adapted to its own purposes in the form of this Venn diagram. But the Japanese concept is called ikigai. And in the westernized version of it, there's 4 quadrants. There's what you love, what the world needs, what you can be paid for, and what you're good at. And if you can find something that aligns or gives you some degree of all 4 of those things, you feel a sense of meaning and purpose and fulfillment in your life. And that's the tool I used to check, am I moving towards a direction that feels like it could be an expression of my purpose? I don't think we all just have one. I think there's lots of ways to kind of build a life around those 4 qualities that creates a really powerful sense of meaning for us in the world. And so that's what I would think of as what it means to live closer to purpose alignment, is do you have those 4 quadrants met in some way in your life, either through, it's great to get them all in one, if you can get them all from a job, or if you can balance the things you do outside of work with the things that you're missing in your role to really get that sense of satisfaction and fulfillment from what the world needs, what you're good at, what you love, and what you can be paid for. So the world needing something from you, you're giving back, right? What you're good at, something that has natural talent and ability. What you love, something that just truly lights you up or has you feel excited, or you do it for free, or, what you spend your Saturdays on, kind of thing. And what you can be paid for, right? We all need money to pay the bills. And so what can kind of sustain the lifestyle that you want? And so those 4 pieces really help people feel a sense of deeper meaning and satisfaction. I use it a lot with my clients. And your second question was around leadership. Could you remind me?
Yeah, effective leadership. How do you define effective leadership?
I think effective leadership is self-aware leadership that is values aligned and leading from a place of integrity. And leading from a place of integrity and authenticity means knowing thyself well enough to know your values and what actions create deeper alignment with those values for you and your team. Because people trust leaders who show up authentically, right? And they want to follow people and believe in people who embody those qualities of authenticity and alignment for them. And so I think it starts with this process of understanding one's purpose or having that sense of ikigai. If you have a really clear internal compass, you're not as easily swayed by forces around you, right? So you're not just jumping on the next fad. You're not just like trying to people please everybody and making yourself small in the world. When you really derive your authority from an internal source of alignment with what matters to you, you can lead more authentically in the world by simply expressing those values in your work and life.
Yeah, absolutely. And Gabriel, I'm just going to share just a little bit about myself. So I was born with what's called spastic quadriplegia cerebral palsy. Simply means that I don't have enough oxygen in my legs to walk normally, and I've dedicated a large portion of my adult life to advocating for inclusion in all aspects of society for folks with disabilities. So I'm curious to ask you, based on your experience, how do you think we can better define an inclusive societal culture for all people to be successful?
That's an interesting question. I think inclusion to me means that everybody feels honored by what a group is doing. And I use a toolkit in my work called Authentic Relating that has this concept in it called honor self and honor other. And the basic question that you can ask to do that in any situation is, what's needed here? So like, what do you need and what do I need? And where do those needs meet in the middle? And how can we bring curiosity instead of judgment to our relationships so we can genuinely find out what is important to the person on the other side of the divide there, whether it's a screen or a room or a political ideology. What matters to them, and how can we build a society that honors the things that matter to them while not taking away anything that matters to me? That's the sweet spot. And I think it's definitely, if you look out in the world, we're probably a far cry from it by many people's estimation. But I think when I hear you say what would be an inclusive society, it would be something that genuinely takes into account the needs of all people and does its best to honor and meet those individuals in what's true for them, instead of making blanket assumptions from places that lack curiosity and are centered more in judgment.
Yeah, absolutely. And just building on that, one of the reasons I wanted to start this podcast, Gabriel, is that I looked at the world and I said to myself, there are so many sort of devices that are working to sort of tear us apart instead of bringing us together. So I wanted to start this podcast to have authentic conversations on really how do we build bridges of unity and acceptance. So I'll ask you that question in the form of, how do you think we can build more bridges of unity, building on your last answer?
I think we need to be willing to make more space for curiosity about each other. I see this from both sides of the political divide in the United States, and I'm not sure. I mean, I think everybody in the US thinks Canada's way more chill than maybe it is, but in the United States, there's a lot of animosity towards people who disagree with you or look different than you or have a different belief. And I think replacing that animosity with a sense of curiosity is a great place to start. I would be lying if I thought I had an answer big enough to tackle that question or smart enough to tackle that question, but I could imagine a place to start. And I think it would be setting aside judgment and replacing that with curiosity. And, we have this principle of like innocent until proven guilty. And I don't think we actually treat each other that way in practice. I think it's very hard to assume no ill intent. And if we were able to do that and really be curious about one another's experience and try to learn and understand each other deeper, we might find we have more in common than we have different.
Yeah, go ahead, sir.
That would be my hope.
Yeah, absolutely. And Gabriel, I'm also curious to ask you, what does that mean to you to sort of live with empowerment? What does living with a sense of adventure also mean to you?
Living with a sense of empowerment to me means that I feel like I am kind of the author of my choices. I learned from this teacher, Jim Detmer, these kind of 4 levels of being. There's to me, which is life happens to me. By me, I make life happen. Through me is kind of like I co-create or cooperate with life happening. And as me, which is life is me. It's a non-dual state, which typically is thought of as enlightenment in a lot of meditation traditions. But I think empowerment is being able to consistently live in by me and through me, where you feel like you're in authorship mode and you're not at the effect of the world around you. You're able to live from the outside, the inside out instead of the outside in. And you're able to cooperate with life and be that co-creator and allow that flow. Like what wants to happen here, where you're not in resistance to your circumstances. You still feel agency and empowerment, but you're not like at the grindstone all the time either, like you against the world trying to win. That to me is what I think empowerment is.
Yeah, absolutely. And Gabriel, you tell me that you're passionate about cycling, obviously, but wild mushrooms and helping people live with a transformative power. So tell me about your passions and what really gets you out of bed excited in the morning, my friend.
Yeah, that's a pretty broad question because I'm enthusiastic about a lot of things in my life. But I think hunting wild mushrooms is something I would do almost every day if I could. It's just so fun to go out into the forest and interact with nature and learn your land and come into a deeper sense of connection with the environment around you. And I joke that mushrooms are kind of like sort of like adult Pokemon. You know what I mean? Like you go out into the forest on this little adventure to try to find this elusive creature that only occurs in the right place at the right time. And they're great teachers, and they're also allies in the sense that they give us food and medicine and all these different things that we need. And they're fascinating to me because I also see them as a bridge organism. They're the bridge between life and death. So they take something that has died and create life from it and recycle those nutrients into the forest for the benefit of all organisms, not just themselves. So I think we could take a cue from them in that regard of like, how can we really learn to waste less and create opportunity from destruction instead of just leaving this path of death behind us, really. Yeah, they're fascinating and they're really, really fun. They're super photogenic. They're really pretty. They get you curious about all these interactions in the world around you that you might otherwise miss. And I'm glad to see the cultural conversation shifting around mushrooms in general, not just psychedelics, but people seem to be more fascinated by fungi these days than they have been in the past.
Yeah, well, there's always room for advancement and learning, isn't there?
I hope so.
Me too. And Gabriel, I'm also curious to ask you, what does it mean to live with intention, and how do you define sort of leadership with purpose?
So, two questions. How do I define living with intention? And the second one was, how do I define leadership with purpose?
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like the answer for me to both of these would be similar to some of the things I said before around alignment with values. But living with intention, to me, comes from a practice of self-awareness and mindfulness. And it also relates to that by me and through me thing where I talked about being aware of choice. So intentionality to me simply means present moment awareness that creates choice of outcome. And so am I intentional with my eating, or am I just sort of like binge eating mindlessly, right? Am I intentional with my engagement with social media, or am I just like doom scrolling and spacing out? Am I intentional with the work that I engage in, or am I just kind of like trying to plow through the day doing the bare minimum? Am I intentional in my relationships, or am I just sort of reacting to whatever comes up? Or am I trying to design something that's based on what both of us really want? Those are kind of examples I think of with intentionality. And it arises from self-awareness, which is helped in my life by a practice of meditation. I think meditation can really help with intentional choice because it's just like going to the gym and doing like tricep reps. You're just focusing on your breath and trying to be as present and mindful as you can of the immediate moment you're in. And so I think that's a really helpful practice to create a lot of choice in our lives, because we can even choose to, of like, how do I want to say this? We can choose not to obsess over negative experience. We can't avoid pain or discomfort, but we can choose what we believe about it. And I think that is a level of intentionality that everyone could benefit from. And the other question was around authentic leadership, right? Or how did you phrase it? Was it purpose leadership?
How do you define leadership with purpose? Yeah.
Leadership with purpose. Yep, real simple. Leadership with purpose is leadership that's aligned with values and that's taken the time to consider how to put those values into practice in the way the organization functions at every level.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Gabriel, in the final couple of minutes I have with you this morning, I wanted to end our conversation by asking you the question that I ask all of my guests when I end conversations, and that's, when you look at your life from a personal and professional standpoint, how do you want your overall legacy to be defined?
Oh, that's a beautiful question. Really is it. The name is escaping me. There's a sociologist that did some famous work on death, and he describes most every human life as an immortality project. So all of us are trying to cheat death by leaving something behind, either in the form of a legacy or a family or something that allows us to outlast our mortal existence. And I think it's unexamined because I think our culture doesn't do a good job of dealing with death. But I love that you asked this question about legacy because it's important to me and I think about it a lot. And I guess it's still a little open ended for me. I'd like to, I'd like everybody who met me to feel like they've won the lottery or like something good happened to them in their life. And I'd like the way that I have lived in life to be an inspiration for others to pursue more of what matters to them in their lives because we don't have a lot of time. And I think we're distracted by a lot of things that aren't as important as they're made out to be. And if we can be intentional in our choices in our lives and really focus on the things that bring us fulfillment and enrich the lives of others and the world around us, I think the world could look like an incredibly different place in a very short period of time. So I would hope that my legacy in some degree would inspire others to follow a path of purpose and meaning to them as well.
Yeah, Gabriel, I'm all about helping people reach their fullest heights of the potential because, I truly believe that we all are given a set of skills, and if we don't use them, we're depriving the world of sort of our continual progress. So I appreciate that answer, my friend, and I'm finally curious to ask you if people want to get connected with the good work that you do, my friend. What's the best way they can do that?
I'm pretty active on social media, more of a personal account than a business account. But if you want to see plenty of pictures of mushrooms and fun quotes, you can go to Fungabe on Instagram. That's FUNNGABE. So it's Fungabe with two N's. And you can read more about my story and connect with me and join my newsletter at my website, which is effectiveconnection.com. And you can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/Gabe DeRita, DeRita. So those would probably be the three best ways for people who are curious to find out more about my work. Effectiveconnection.com, Fungabe with two N's, and facebook.com/Gabe DeRita.
Fantastic. Well, Gabe, I really appreciated the privilege of having a conversation and engaging in conversation with you this morning, all about effective leadership, intention, alignment with purpose, and leadership, my friend. Your work in this space and time on my behalf is most appreciated. And I want to thank you for being here this morning.
Thanks, Kevin. I appreciate you making time for me as well. And look forward to listening to the episode once it's out in the world.